My name is Marcus Webb. I'm 28, and 6 months ago my phone, TV, laptop, and the forgotten tablet in my kitchen drawer all lit up with the same black banner and the same flat synthetic voice. Emergency alert. If you hear your own voice outside, it is not you. Most people probably swiped that away. For me, it was a sentence I'd already read in a rule book on a hill above a town called Graydon, the night I learned some warnings show up only after enough people die. Before Graydon, my life was small. I worked third shift network ops in Tacoma, sealed in a windowless room with humming racks and burnt coffee, wearing the same black hoodie, dark jeans, and steel-toe boots because no one ever saw me. I watched graphs at 3 in the morning and made sure blinking red dots went back to green. Then a posting appeared on the internal board. Remote Systems Technician, Site 7, hazard pay. The salary was nearly double mine, plus housing. Duty, Emergency Broadcast Infrastructure Monitoring. Location, Graydon Region Restricted. There was a line about tolerance for extended isolation that made me pause, but the number at the top made me click apply. An automated reply invited me to a confidential in-person interview. Instead of HR, a security guard I didn't recognize took me to an unmarked office on a floor my badge had never opened. Inside, a man in a plain black polo stood as I entered. "Marcus," he said, "I'm Cole." No last name, no handshake. He asked the usual technical questions first. Then he closed the folder. "How do you handle being completely alone?" he asked. "I work nights," I said. "I'm used to it." "You still have people in the building," he said. "I mean being the only person on a site, no one to come check if something sounds wrong. Does that bother you?" I hesitated. "Not really," I said. His expression didn't change. "Have you ever heard your name when no one was there? Voices from another room, radio static that sounds like words?" "No," I said. "Sleep paralysis, night terrors." "No," he wrote a note, then looked up. "At Site 7 we have protocols that will feel excessive and sometimes frightening," he said. "You won't always know why they exist. We pay you to follow them anyway. If you need explanations before obedience, this is the wrong job." I thought about how badly I needed the money. "I can follow rules," I said. He slid a folder across the desk. Inside was a non-disclosure agreement, a printed map to a town called Graydon I'd never heard of, and a matte black keycard with my name written on tape. "Report Monday at 1400, he said. "Once you sign, you don't discuss this with anyone. If you change your mind, do it before you pass the fence." I signed. The drive to Graydon took me off the interstate, off the highway, and finally onto a narrow road through pine forest until my GPS showed nothing but green. The only proof I wasn't lost was a sun-faded sign. Graydon Pop, 1204. The town sat in a shallow valley, a few blocks of houses and small buildings around a main street that looked like time had skipped it. One gas station, one diner, a hardware store, a church. The facility sat on a low hill beyond town, a concrete block behind chain-link fence. No logo, no name, just a gate with a reader. When I held my keycard out, the light blinked green and the motor dragged the gate open. Inside, the air was cold and still. Cole met me in the lobby with a clipboard. "You're on time," he said. "Shift starts at 1600. If you're late, no one comes looking." He walked me through narrow halls, showed me the bathroom, a break room, and a locker room with 6 lockers. One had my name on it. Inside was a plain black hoodie. "Wear this on shift," he said. "Dark and consistent, easier for the cameras." "Cameras for what?" I asked. "For seeing you," he said. "We like to know where our operator is when other things are moving." He led me into the control room. 1 chair, 3 wide monitors stacked vertically, and a wall of humming racks. The top screen showed a map of the region with icons marking towers and relays. The middle was a grid of camera feeds from around Graydon. The gas station, the diner, a few intersections, the fence outside. The bottom was a black console with a single red line. Node 7, Emergency Alert Relay Status, Standby. "We're a redundancy node," Cole said. "If primary emergency alert paths fail, certain messages route through us. You acknowledge health checks and watch for anything that doesn't look right. When command pushes an alert, you confirm it leaves here. You do not originate or edit messages." "Clear." "Clear," I said. He handed me a folder labeled Site 7 Protocol Summary. The first few rules were standard. Don't prop doors, don't disable cameras, don't leave between 1600 and 600 without clearance. Then I hit Rule 5. If you hear knocking on any exterior door after 1600, do not respond unless command confirms identity. Ignore pleas for help or use of your name. The next line made my jaw clench. Rule 6. If you hear your own voice outside the facility at any time, do not speak, do not approach the sound, and do not open any door or window. Acknowledge via silent terminal only. Second occurrence, initiate full lockdown. I looked up. You're serious, I said. Someone really needed this written down. More than one, Cole said. You don't need their stories, you need their rules. He left at 1600, leaving me alone with the hum of the racks and the camera feeds. For hours, almost nothing happened. A few cars moved through town. A guy filled his tank. The diner's lot emptied. I reread the protocols until they felt like superstition and started to wonder if the hazard was just paranoia wrapped in paperwork. Around 1 in the morning, the bottom monitor chimed, a sharp tone that cut through the silence. The red status, standby line flickered and changed to status, inbound priority. Lines of code flashed, then cleared, leaving a single sentence that wrote itself across the console, one word at a time. Emergency alert. If you hear your own voice outside, it is not you. The sentence finished writing itself and then looped, crawling along the bottom monitor in red. Emergency alert. If you hear your own voice outside, it is not you. A box popped up in the center. Route confirmation required. Press F2 to acknowledge. I waited a second for some follow-up, then realized I was the follow-up. I pressed F2. Status. Broadcasting blink, then status. Complete, returning to standby. The text vanished. The racks kept humming. The control room went back to the low, constant noise you stop hearing after a while. Fans, ventilation, the tiny creak of my chair when I shifted in my black hoodie and dark jeans, steel toes hooked under the base. For a minute, nothing else moved. Grayed on at 01:13 looked like a model town someone had forgotten to touch. Empty Main Street, gas pumps dark, one truck rolling through an intersection without stopping. The feed of the facility gate showed the chain link fence, sodium lamp buzzing overhead, the access road sloping down into shadow. My own face ghosted back at me in the glass, pale under the hood, faded logo cracked across my chest. I told myself the message was headed to 100 other places too, that I was just a wire, that whatever it meant was someone else's problem. That held until every camera feed on the middle screen flashed to static. All 16 at once, one full second of gray snow, then they snapped back. No stagger, no frame drift, just gone and back like someone had blinked the whole valley. The logs showed nothing. Power stable. Network clean. No dropped packets, no error flags. It didn't even register as a glitch. I sat there watching the tiny white cursor in the corner of the console pulse, feeling watched by my own equipment. At 02:04 the bottom monitor chimed again, but lower this time, a 2-note drop that made the skin on my arms crawl. New text appeared over the status bar. Origin, command level black. Destination, Site 7 only. The message filled the screen in white on black. Lockdown protocol Delta. Remain inside facility. Do not open any door for any reason. Voice contact restriction, active. No verbal speech until STANDDOWN. Acknowledge. 2 buttons under it, accept, report error. I stared at no verbal speech and had the urge to say something, but Rule 6 was sitting in my memory like a loaded gun. I clicked accept. The overhead lights dimmed automatically, enough to flatten the colors in the room. A timer appeared in the corner. Delta elapsed 00:00. The desk phone screen went black. The VoIP panel on the side monitor showed all outbound channels locked by command. Whoever sat above Cole had just put tape over my mouth and called it safety. I opened the internal console chat and typed, Site 7 acknowledges Delta, requesting clarification. Sending blink, then delivered. No reply, so I watched. That was the job. The 16 camera feeds showed the town and the fence and the empty road. Nothing changed, but after a while the stillness started feeling less like sleep and more like posing. At 02:19 something moved on cam 3, the one angled down the access road. A lone figure was walking up the hill toward the gate. Dark hoodie, hands in pockets, head down. At first it was just a person. Then familiarity hit me in pieces. The short stride when the wind pushed back. The way the shoulders hunched like there should have been a backpack there. The slight roll of the left foot. I recognized that gait because I lived in it. Reflex made me check the timestamp. Live. I looked down at myself, still in the chair, boots on the tile, then back at the screen. The man in the hoodie kept coming. I sent another message to command with hands that felt slightly numb. Visual anomaly on cam 3. Subject MATCHES operator appearance and gait. Confirmed drill status. Delivered. No answer. The figure reached the gate and stopped right in front of the camera's blind spot. He didn't test the fence or swipe a card. He just stood there, head angled a little like he was listening. The mic on that pole was trash, mostly wind, but I turned it up. At first there was only air moving. Then under it a faint whistling slid through. 3 notes up, 4 quick, 2 down. A pattern I'd been doing under my breath for years whenever I was thinking. I'd never taught it to anyone. My mouth went dry. The timer read 00:15. On the security pane, interior doors ticked from unlocked to secure as the building sealed around me. The main entrance status flipped to exterior door, locked, local override disabled. The first knock landed like someone hitting my own skull from the outside. 3 hard blows on the main door, a pause, then 2 softer, exactly the pattern I used to knock on my old apartment when I forgot my keys. The sound came through the concrete and metal together, more felt than heard. Marcus, my own voice called, muffled but clear. Hey man, reader's dead, open up. Rule 6 wasn't abstract anymore. It was a command drilled into my spine. Do not speak. Do not approach. Do not open. My throat burned with the urge to say something, just to prove I still owned my voice, but the cursor on the console pulsed steadily, reminding me there was one channel I was allowed to use and it wasn't my mouth. I stayed in the chair. I made myself breathe slow through my nose and kept my eyes on the entrance camera. From that angle you couldn't see whoever pressed against the door, just the empty pad of concrete and the slice of chain link beyond, swaying in the wind. The knocks came again, sharper. Come on, my voice said, irritation creeping in. I know you're in there. Open the door, Marcus. Hearing my own name in my exact cadence from the wrong side of reinforced steel felt like standing beside a recording booth while something inside wore my skin. I focused on the timer. 00:22. However long Delta lasted, I just had to sit there and not move, not speak, not break. The third round of knocks sounded wrong even before my brain caught why. The rhythm stayed the same, but there was a second set under the first, half a beat behind, lighter and clumsy, like another pair of hands learning the pattern by copying mine. The double knock did something to my nerves the first voice hadn't managed. It felt like someone tapping directly on my spine. One set of knuckles followed the pattern I'd used my whole life, 3 hard, 2 soft. The second copied it half a beat behind, clumsy and late, like a recording slightly out of sync. Marcus, my own voice said again, right against the metal. Systems glitched, man. Card S not working. You seeing anything on your end? The lobby mic carried my tone perfectly, but in the control room my jaw hadn't moved. My tongue felt numb. Rule 6 repeated in my head like text on a black screen. If you hear your own voice outside, it is not you. Do not speak. Do not approach. Do not open. Come on, the not me said. You going to leave yourself standing out here all night? The second voice tried the same sentence slower. You going to leave yourself standing out here all night? It hit yourself too hard, like that part amused it. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Command still hadn't answered anything, but doing nothing felt worse, so I typed. Subject mimicking operator voice with secondary copy. Audio persistent, requesting guidance. Sending. Delivered. Then nothing. On cam 3, the entrance slab looked empty. Concrete pad, chain link, light buzzing overhead. Whoever was at the door stood in the blind spot by design. Cam 5, watching the trees down the hill, showed the pines moving, the darkness between them bulging for a moment like something breathing, then flattening again. Okay, my stolen voice said, calmer now. Let's try this another way. The knocking stopped. For a moment all I heard was fan noise and my own heartbeat. Then a new sound joined in, breathing in the vents. It started above me, a dragging inhale that made the metal grills tremble, followed by a long exhale that seemed to pull warmth out of the air. The Delta timer read 0027. I thought about muting the lobby audio, but Rule 3 sat right next to Rule 6 in my memory. All sensors must remain active during anomalous events. Any loss of input is assumed hostile. Somewhere down the hall, a badge reader chirped, the denied tone. I snapped my eyes to Cam 9, the corridor between the lobby and inner security door. The inner door sat sealed, red light steady. Above the outer door, the tiny indicator flipped from lock to standby and back in one frame, too fast for hand. The breathing in the vents went on, not matching mine. I held my breath. The sound overhead kept drawing in air at its own pace. "Marcus," my voice called again, softer now, almost friendly. "Look, man, I get it, protocols. You're doing the right thing. We just need you to confirm something." That was my support tone, the one I used when I needed strangers to trust me. Hearing it in the wall made my skin crawl. The second voice echoed, cleaner this time. "We just need you to confirm something." My headset sat on the desk, cable coiled. Even if the phone system had lit up then, I knew I wouldn't wear it. I opened a fresh text log and started typing because it was the only way to feel like I was still in this chain. 0224, exterior audio using operator voice. Secondary copy improving. Internal breathing noise in vent system. No visual correlate. The Delta timer rolled to 0030. Half an hour into a 12-hour shift and my world had shrunk to one room and one rule. "You know they're not answering you," my voice said next, casual. "Command. They never answer when it's bad. That's why this node exists. We're the part they can afford to lose." I froze. That wasn't pulled from any recording. That was commentary ripped straight out of the worst thoughts I kept to myself. The second voice laughed, a dry, cracked sound that glitched and replayed a half beat later like it had stuttered. "You talk to yourself a lot, Marcus," it said, even closer to perfect. "We've been listening. We know every time you said nobody up top cares. Every time you said if the lattice failed, they'd hang it on you and sleep fine anyway." Heat climbed my neck. I'd muttered those lines in other basements, convinced no one but the racks could hear. Hearing them now felt like being quoted by the building. "Shut up," I hissed before I could stop myself. Barely air, more intention than sound. The vents above me dragged in a sharp breath, every grill rattling at once like teeth. I slapped my hand over my mouth too late. The bottom monitor flashed a new line in red. Voice output detected operator. Restriction violation logged. The Delta timer hiccuped, then kept counting. Outside, my stolen voice laughed again, and this time it was flawless. "There you are," it said, pleased. "We've got you now." I braced for pounding, but the next sound through the wall was gentle. A fingertip tap low near the floor, then another higher up, then another farther along, like something learning the building by touch. Cam 8, watching the south wall, showed a smear of darkness sliding over the concrete, deeper than the rest of the night, hugging the structure like it wanted in. A column of temperature alerts bloomed on the status screen. Lobby down 2 degrees, stairwell up 3, equipment room down 1, then all normal again, then off in a different pattern a few seconds later, like invisible doors opening and closing in pockets of air. The whole facility felt like it was clearing its throat. I typed, "minimal voice output, requesting override to contact command or site supervisor." Enter, delivered, more silence. My voice used the gap like it had been waiting for it. "It's not fair," it said, quieter, almost kind. "They built this emergency lattice and never told you what sleeps between nodes. They hand you rules instead of truth. You're not staff, Marcus, you're a fuse." My boots pressed harder into floor. Under the fear, a bitter part of me agreed, and I hated that. The breathing in the vents cut off like someone had hit a switch, leaving the room too quiet. Ceiling tiles made settling pops as if weight had just rolled away. For the first time since Delta began, I heard footsteps not at the entrance, but inside the facility, in the hallway outside the control room. Very slow, heavy, coming straight toward my door. The footsteps in the hallway were too heavy to belong to Cole, and too slow to belong to anyone who'd ever been in a hurry. A dragging weight that made the control room door vibrate in its frame with each step, just enough to set the metal handle ticking like a second hand. I had a camera on that corridor, Cam 9, but the feed showed nothing except the fluorescent tube, the gray walls, the closed inner security door. No shadow, no figure, just empty architecture while the audio picked up the tread of something that weighed more than the building had been built for. Delta elapsed, 0034. Somewhere in the racks, a drive clicked hard like a tooth snapping. My not voice spoke from the other side of the door, and now it didn't even pretend to be muffled. It sounded like it was in the room, standing behind me. "Open the door, Marcus," it said in my calm work tone, the one I used when someone's servers were on fire and I needed them to give me passwords instead of panic. "You don't have to sit in there alone. We can carry the rules for you." The second voice repeated the sentence with no stumble this time. It had learned. The air in the control room felt thicker, heavy with breath that wasn't mine. I kept my hands flat on the desk so I wouldn't grab the handle on reflex and opened a terminal window instead, not to talk to command this time, but to dig. If they weren't going to answer, I'd pull my own answers out of the system's spine. Under the main processes was a directory I hadn't seen before, half hidden behind service names. Proj/Aegis Echo. Not standard ops, not public. I tried to open it and a warning flashed. Clearance level black required. I didn't have black, but the console thought I did for routing. The inbound message earlier had been tagged command level black, which meant the token had to be cached somewhere. The thing outside hit the wall again, open palm this time, 3 soft impacts that left the drywall on Cam 9 perfectly smooth. "We've been here longer than you," it said, and now its voice slid slightly off mine, a chorus just out of phase. "We were here before radios, before wires. They built this lattice to move warnings and never asked what else could move along it. We are the answer to a question they refused to say aloud." My fingers flew, not because I was brave, but because panic makes you faster. I dumped the running processes, grabbed the PID from the last command level black handler and scraped the environment. There it was, token Aegis equals echoframe 07 root. I didn't know what Aegis was, but I knew what root was. I exported the token into my shell and tried the directory again. This time it opened. Files scrolled by, cold and neat. Echoframe overview, TXT, entity acoustic profile bin, incident report site 03 log binding theorem notes, TXT, and near the bottom, one that made my stomach flip, operator replacement protocol, MD. I popped open binding theorem notes first. The notes were written in clipped sentences, some lines erased and rewritten. Acoustic entities require host lattice of human semantic imprint. They are not voices. They are what exists between voices. Early experiments, see Project Choir, suggest they cannot exist without continuous human population to sustain index. Binding achieved by limiting egress paths. Town-level containment most successful. 40-120 households optimal. Lattice nodes on perimeter act as relay and cage. Outside the door, something slid down the metal in a long, slow scrape like a hand with too many joints. "You're reading our file," it said, sounding pleased. "Good. Learn what they did. Learn what they paid us to be." Inside the vents above me, breath returned, faster now, matching my heart rate, not my lungs. I flipped to ECHOFRAME overview. Project Aegis ECHOFRAME. Deployment of subaudible emergency alert scaffolding to reinforce existing town-level bindings and route classified advisories. Side effect. Entities can traverse node to node within lattice space, remain constrained to participating municipalities. Risk of cross-population breach deemed acceptable versus continental scale dispersion. They hadn't built the lattice to protect people from something outside. They'd built it to keep something from ever getting too far from the places they'd already infected, to use our infrastructure as fencing around whole communities. When an alert like the one I'd routed went out, it wasn't just a warning, it was a pressure test. Where are they loudest? Where do they imitate first? The bottom of the overview mentioned a line that made my jaw clench. Operators function as human-level buffers between lattice and entity space. High burnout attrition acceptable. Infrastructure survival prioritized. No mention of operator survival, no extraction plans. They hadn't hired me to watch warnings. I was part of the warning, a fuse soldered into the circuit. Outside, the footsteps shifted closer. The hinges creaked as weight leaned against the door. "You're thinking about sabotage," my voice observed next, and I hated how accurate it sounded. "About killing power, killing the node. That won't help. You're a junction, hurt us here and we press harder somewhere else. Every silent town has one of these now." I opened Operator Replacement Protocol. It was short, a dozen lines at most. "In event of operator compromise, auditory duplication, behavioral drift, or confirmed entity colonization, replacement is authorized. New operator must originate outside current binding radius to avoid pre-indexing. Priority given to individuals with limited external ties. Contract language and compensation designed to encourage voluntary self-selection." I read that twice, then a third time until the words blurred. They hadn't chosen me despite the fact I was alone. They'd chosen me because of it. I should have felt despair. Instead, something focused clicked into place under my ribs. If I was a fuse, I could still choose where to blow. I flipped to the network diagram for Site 7. The node linked Graydon and 4 other small towns, each with their own little emergency alert receiver: Toland, Mercy Ridge, Baker's Hollow, and a place just listed as Grid 19. All of them in this binding radius. All of them holding something like the thing outside my door. There was a test interface for regional alerts, the kind you're never supposed to use in production. It sat under a menu called Scenario Sims, but the status read, "Live paths available, command override required." Beneath it, in tiny text, was a note: "Entities demonstrate aversion to specific pattern combinations of semantic content and carrier tone at amplitude above 20 dBc COUNTRPHRSE set alpha." I opened the counterphrase set. "Short strings meaningless on paper. SPEAKBACK09. Channel closed. Index return. Each tagged with a waveform graph and a note. Entity withdrawal response observed." Someone somewhere had made them flinch. No one had told us how. On the other side of the door, my stolen voice lowered, losing almost all resemblance to mine now. "Open up, Marcus," it rumbled, timbre spreading like it was coming from the whole wall. "Let us in and we'll stop knocking on you. We'll stop wearing you. We'll take someone else." I dragged one of the phrases onto the staging line, set the target to Site 7 local only, and watched the transmit button stay gray. Then I fed the black token into the override prompt. The button turned red and ready. For the first time since Delta began, I made a decision that wasn't only about obeying or freezing. I leaned toward the console mic, kept my eyes on the door, and spoke not to whatever waited there but to the lattice itself as I hit transmit and said, very clearly, "SPEAKBACK09. Channel closed. Index return." The building reacted before the thing at the door did. The instant the counterphrase left my mouth and I hit transmit, every rack in the room roared, fans screaming up to a pitch I'd never heard. The lights strobed once and locked into a hard white, and the temperature crashed so fast my breath turned to fog, and the chair arms burned my palms with cold. On the hallway camera, the control room door stayed motionless, but the cinder block beside it rippled like paint on water, mortar lines bowing and snapping back. And from the other side, my stolen voice collapsed into a sound that didn't belong in any throat, like every call I'd ever taken played backward through a broken compressor. The Delta timer froze at 00:37. New text cut across the bottom monitor in a sharper font than the rest. "COUNTRPHRSE set alpha active. Entity response. Retraction." Above me, the vents reversed, dragging air hard toward the ducts as if the building were sucking its breath back in, and for a second the whole facility exhaled through its seams, a low-pressure shock that made my ears pop. On Cam 9, the smear on the wall tore itself free, peeling off the concrete like someone ripping up shadow, folding in until it became a darker column standing where a person should be, edges smeared, detail refusing to settle, like my eyes kept slipping off it. It stepped back from the door without moving its legs, motion like someone dragging a shape on a screen instead of a body. When it spoke again, it had dropped the act of being me. The voice was deeper and too wide, layered with other men in it, operators I'd never meet. "That pattern," it said, "hurts." On the map pane little circles around Graydon and 4 other small towns pulsed red, then shifted to blue, one after another, as Set Alpha fired from their nodes too. Someone had buried a weapon in Project Aegis ECHOFRAME and waited for a human fuse with the right token and a bad enough night to pull it. I guess that was me. The column in the hall shook like heat shimmer in reverse. The vents hissed a thin, dry breath. "Pain changes behavior," it said. "You tighten the cage and you call that safety. We adapt." I believed it, but my options had never been between good and safe, just between slow failure and loud failure. "Then adapt to this," I said, and the console flashed another voice output violation in red, but it was too late to pretend I was just an obedient relay. The Delta timer jerked and jumped straight to 0600, then 0601. Status: Delta STANDDOWN. The main door status flipped from locked to local control. On Cam 9, the column gave one last pulse, then thinned and slid sideways into the block, spreading flat until the wall was just cinderblock again. The temperature alarms cleared. The breathing noise stopped. For the first time since I'd sat down, the building sounded like a building instead of a throat. No one from command appeared on my screens. The Aegis Echo files I'd forced open snapped behind access errors like teeth closing. Node 7's status line went back to quiet green. At 600, there was no knock on the inner door, no vehicle at the gate. I walked the empty corridors, checked the lobby, stared at the inside of the main entrance half expecting scorched metal or handprints. It was just steel and paint. Graydon at dawn looked like any other forgotten place when I drove through it in my black hoodie and boots, past the diner, past the gas station, past men unlocking doors who never looked up at the hill that had been their cage. 6 hours later, my phone rang. I was still on the road. "You lit up Set Alpha on a live net," Cole said, no greeting. "We didn't think anyone would ever do that." "You put the button there," I said. "You wrote the rules, I followed them." In the background, I heard keyboards, printers, the hum of people who'd never seen the thing I just watched peel off a wall. "Project Aegis ECHOFRAME was designed to hold them inside small bindings," he said. "Those towns, those 42 family grids, that's the fence. The lattice lets us move alerts and pressure. Alpha was theoretical. Tonight we got live confirmation. Every node reports the same thing: entity withdrawal, comms drop, silence, containment tightened." "And the part where pain changes behavior?" I asked. "We don't know yet," he admitted. "You hurt something that thinks in patterns. You showed it there's a combination on the wire that burns. It'll adapt. Maybe it stays quiet for a century. Maybe it learns new paths." Command's answer is to decommission Site 7 before it becomes a special case. "And me?" "Relocation," he said. "Off lattice. Big city, no local node. Remote job, stipend, monitoring. Officially, you never worked Graydon or Site 7. Unofficially, you don't say Aegis out loud again. If you stay near that hill after this, you're not a fuse anymore, you're kindling." 2 days later, I was in Sacramento in a bland 8th-floor apartment with a view of water. Same black hoodie, same jeans, steel-toe boots lined up by a different door. They gave me a new phone preloaded with an emergency readiness app, a remote network gig I could do half asleep, and a handler whose voice I heard wants to go over new rules. Don't travel back into the binding radius, don't discuss classified infrastructure anomalies. And if I started hearing my name in the vents, call their number, not a therapist. That was 6 months ago. I keep count because at 03:12 this morning, every screen in my apartment froze. The show on the TV stopped mid-frame, my laptop dropped off the network, my phone buzzed on the counter. All 3 went black, then filled with a banner I knew too well: emergency alert. Under it, instead of a county code, the tag read, National Lattice Test, Aegis ECHOFRAME. The text below was exactly what I'd watched crawl across the console that first night. If you hear your own voice outside, it is not you. Only this time the alert wasn't read by the flat synthetic voice. It was mine. Not live, not quite, but close enough that I recognized the way I clipped certain consonants, the way I paused before "it is not you." They had recorded me saying the counterphrase and built it into the national script, wired my fear into the official warning set. Somewhere, millions of people just heard my voice tell them not to trust their own. A smaller crawl ran along the bottom. Do not engage. Do not open doors or windows. Await further instructions. A moment later, my phone buzzed again, a text from a number saved as Cole that I'd never created. Alpha forced withdrawal on rural bindings, it read. Acoustic anomalies now trending in dense grids. You rattled the cage. They're checking bars in places like where you are. Same rules. If you hear yourself in the hall, do not respond. It's 03:47 as I think this, sitting in the dark in a different control room I pay rent for, staring at the emergency alert banner burned into the top of my TV while whatever movie I was pretending to watch tries to reclaim the rest of the screen. The building is quiet. No knocking yet. No second set of steps half a beat behind mine. But the walls hum in a way I recognize now, like there's more in the wiring than power, like something is pressing an ear against the grid and listening for familiar shapes in the noise. Out beyond my window, the lattice runs under streets and towers, still wrapped around towns like Graydon and now stitched through cities like this, carrying things that remember the pattern of my breath and the way my voice sounded when I finally stopped obeying and said, then adapt to this. I used to think the nightmare was being stuck in a little town with a rule you couldn't break. Now I know worse, realizing you were the one who taught the thing outside how big the world really is. So if you hear your own voice outside, wherever you live, don't open the door. I know exactly how convincing I can be when I really need someone to let me in.